Israel's toxic agenda in Africa just got worse, and a forgotten video of Benjamin Netanyahu that's now trending online may hold the key to understanding why. In this video, we're going to break down how his words about hope and unity completely contradict the harsh reality of Israel's actions in the continent of Africa, actions that continue to shape the continent today. If you care about Africa's future and the lives affected by ongoing conflicts, then you need to see how Israel's involvement has fueled racism, division, and death across Africa and for the African diaspora. If you don't know me, my name is TJ. I'm Nigerian and British mixed, and on this channel, we talk about African geopolitics.
We have tremendous opportunities. We've solved our water problem, even though we're a very dry land. We've solved our agricultural problem. We produce with great productivity vegetables, dairy. I always am boasting which cow produces more milk per cow in the world. You think it's a French cow or a Dutch cow. It's an Israeli cow. It's a computerized cow. Every move is monitored, But we are eager to share this technology in so many fields with our African friends. We think that Israel now is the best partner that the countries of Africa could have, and it's something that is dear to our hearts. The founder of modern Zionism, the national movement of the Jewish people, was Theodor Herzl, and he said, after I liberate the Jewish people, I will go to Africa to help liberate the black people. We have our African brethren, the Ethiopian Jews, who are in our society, and I personally work every few weeks to help integrate more and more and incorporate them in our society. I believe this. I believe in Africa. I believe in your future, and I believe in our partnership for this future. And I believe that this meeting will be seen as a turning point in Israel's ability to reach the broad number of African countries, which is our goal. We want a better future for you, a better future for all of us, and we think we can be your perfect partners.
So the clip you just watched was of Benjamin Netanyahu speaking in 2016 to a gathering of African leaders, promising of a new era of partnership built on liberation, technology, and mutual progress. He quoted Theodor Herzl, the father of Zionism, saying that after the liberation of Jewish people, he would go on to Africa to help liberate black people. But nearly a decade later, the so-called liberation he spoke of has turned into something far darker. There's also an arrogance to Netanyahu's words. The very idea that Israel would come to liberate Africa as though the continent has been waiting for a savior. It raises an obvious question. Liberate Africa from who? His neo-colonial allies? When he talks about food, agriculture, and the Jewish cows, it shows a deep misunderstanding of Africa itself. Africa doesn't need food, it needs development. We all know the continent is one of the most fertile in the world. Everyone comes to Africa for agriculture. Yet Netanyahu's framing suggests a starving continent waiting to be fed. What Africa truly needs is the power to control and benefit from what it already produces, both in the agricultural and the mineral sectors, without seeing those resources extracted cheaply and shipped abroad. And here's the bitter irony. Israel is actively connected to those very systems of extraction and exploitation he pretends to oppose. So let's start with the contradiction at the heart of Netanyahu's speech. While Israel spoke of partnership, African descendants or diaspora inside Israel, Ethiopian Jews, were and are experiencing systemic racism and discrimination, from police brutality to employment barriers and even the Depo-Provera contraception scandal, where Ethiopian women were reportedly given long-term contraceptive injections without their consent, a practice many saw as an attempt to control their population. Israel's treatment of its own black citizens exposed the hypocrisy behind Netanyahu's words. How can a nation claim to liberate Africa while suppressing Africans in its own home? If you look online today, on YouTube, blogs, news articles, You can find countless videos, testimonials, and reports documenting the racist treatment of black Jews in Israel. But the deception doesn't stop there. After that 2016 speech, Israel expanded its influence across Africa. I guess this is the liberation he was talking about. Not through empowerment, but through debt, arms deals, and covert manipulation. Across the continent, Israeli companies and intermediaries have supplied weapons and securities technology to regimes involved in brutal conflicts, fueling instability and division for profit. This is not partnership, this is profiteering from bloodshed. And nowhere is more clearer than this than in Sudan. Right now, Sudan is facing the worst humanitarian crisis the world has seen in decades. A genocide that has already claimed the lives of multiple hundreds of thousands of people. In fact, it's hard to pin down the exact numbers. Such is the violence and the difficulty of reporting in those conditions. What we know for sure is around 8 million people have been displaced, and tens of millions are in desperate need of aid right now. Entire cities have been reduced to rubble, families torn apart, and starvation is spreading as the conflict intensifies. Investigations and reports have linked Israel weapons and surveillance technology to actors involved in this ongoing war, helping sustain the machinery of violence that is destroying the country. In other words, Israel's fingerprints are on the tools of death that continue to escalate this crisis. While Netanyahu once promised liberation, his nation's military-industrial connections are now entrenched in one of Africa's most devastating conflicts. This couldn't be further from liberation. It's actually complicity in suffering. Let's not forget the diamond trade. Israeli billionaire Dan Goetze, through mining and oil deals in the Democratic Republic of Congo, acquiring assets for a fraction of their real value. His empire, which is tied to corruption scandals, shows foreign interests continuing to drain Africa's wealth while ordinary Congolese people remain impoverished. It's the same cycle of exploitation the colonial powers have always been using. And in this case, the main player of that colonialism is an Israeli. Even the ideological roots of this relationship tells a troubling story. Theodor Herzl, the man Netanyahu proudly quoted, once proposed creating a Jewish state in the continent of Africa, a plan that, if realized, could very well have produced the situation that we're seeing in Gaza today on the continent. This is not the kind of vision Africa should be celebrating or aspiring towards. So when Netanyahu invokes Herzl's name as a guiding light, he's not presenting an example of partnership or liberation. He's reviving a colonial idea that would see Africa as the canvas for someone else's ambitions. That mindset shaped Israel's engagement with Africa, blending genuine innovation with paternalistic control. It's that same tone that Netanyahu used in his speech, speaking not to equals, but to nations expected to follow Israel's lead. So why does this matter now? Because this forgotten speech isn't just history, it was a prophecy. We can see the pattern and behavior that Israel has made since his intention to liberate the black people. Netanyahu's vision of partnership has evolved into a network of influence that touches everything from resource extraction to digital surveillance. Israeli spyware, known as Pegasus, has been linked to African governments monitoring journalists and opposition figures. Under the banner of cooperation, Israel has built the kind of access that gives it leverage over how African nations govern, communicate, and trade. Like I said before, this couldn't be further from liberation. While Israel tells Africa it can be a model for development, the same government continues to occupy the Palestinian land. South Africa knows what apartheid looks like because it lived it, and the continent certainly would not need a second apartheid. And this is why Africa took Israel to the International Courts of Justice, arguing that Israel's conduct in Gaza violates the Genocide Convention. And it's not just South Africa. Several countries have formally moved to support this case. At the same time, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court applied for arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and other officials for alleged war crimes, a step that one or two countries also have publicly said they would respect. I would like to suggest that a non-African that's wanted for war crimes is not the ideal figurehead to bring liberation to black people. And in all this, I'm quite proud that African leadership is helping lead the global push to hold that power to account. I mean, Netanyahu's position is just full of contradictions. When he cites Theodor Herzl, who had the plans of establishing a Jewish state in the continent of Africa, I always find it difficult to understand this from their religious perspective. By the way, it wasn't just Africa where they wanted to establish a state. South America was also targeted, with Argentina being the main place they were looking at. If the claim to land rests on a religious promise by God that supersedes human law, then why did the movement explore other continents outside of Israel as options for its holy state? What it means is either the divine title was not a decisive factor, or it was used selectively to justify their political project. For Africans, that matters. It means Herzl is not a model to present to the continent as a guiding light at all. And it explains why importing that ideology in the continent of Africa would have risked producing a Gaza-like reality on African soil. What Africa has to realize is it is not powerless when dealing with these types of leaders. The continent now stands at a crossroads. China, for example, offers infrastructure and technology without the same political ideological baggage. African nations can choose real partnerships based off equality, not exploitation. It is time to learn from these patterns and demand transparency and sovereignty in every foreign relationship. Netanyahu's words about hope and unity may have been meant to inspire, but today they serve as a warning. We've seen the pattern of his behavior since he made that speech. Because when foreign powers come to Africa, speaking the language of partnership, history shows us what often follows: debt, division, dependency. It all uncovers this truth. The liberation Africa deserves will not come from Tel Aviv, Washington, or Europe. It can only come from within. I would love to know what you guys think about this. Did you guys see this video circling on social media? Please leave your thoughts in the comments. But if you have nothing to say, would it be too much for me to ask you to write the words, "No more false liberation"? It just lets me know that you watched the video to the end, you support the channel, you like what I'm doing, and you want me to continue. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.